It really grinds my gears how Bryce Young has already been labeled a bust by the clowns in the national media and all the casual fans out there. So I guess everything was Bryce Young's fault last year, right? I guess he was supposed to be out there playing punt, pass blocking for himself, catching his own passes, and running the football. And it's so ironic how many clowns out here claim they know ball and, are quick to say, I don't know anything about football because I still believe in Bryce Young. And they expected Bryce Young to turn a shitty situation into gold, having to go through 2 head coaches and 3 offensive coordinator changes in the span of 1 season. He had no offensive line, no run game. He had a 125-year-old Adam Thielen being his only reliable wide receiver, but yet that's making excuses? Is that making excuses? Or is that just being honest about the situation? You see, yes, I understand that Bryce Young was the number 1 overall pick, and he has to be able to overcome certain limitations. But he can't overcome a complete shit show that he was thrown into last year. And what's so ironic is, despite how bad the Carolina Panthers were last year, Bryce Young beat C.J. Stroud when the Panthers played the Texans. And he outplayed them too, but nobody talks about that though. C.J. Stroud is such the golden boy, but he's 0-1 against the guy who got drafted number 1 overall over him, who many people felt was a mistake getting it taken before him. But nobody talks about that though. Nobody talks about how well Bryce Young played against the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. To me, Bryce Young's rookie season doesn't count. I look at his rookie season as a throwaway year, the same way I looked at Trevor Lawrence's rookie season with Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was so bad as a head coach that he didn't even make it to the final week of the regular season. They cut ties with that dude when they still had like a month and some change left of the year. And then you saw how good Trevor Lawrence looked year 2 once Doug Peterson arrived on the scene and he got a legitimate head coach with a legitimate supporting cast. And I believe that the same is going to happen with Bryce Young this year, with Dave Canales being his new head coach. Dave Canales is the king when it comes to resurrecting quarterbacks' careers. He helped resurrect Baker Mayfield's career last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And before that, he was instrumental in Geno Smith having that random season when he just shocked us all and he damn near was an MVP candidate. You look at the new supporting cast that the Panthers have given Bryce Young, a better offensive line. You got Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette as his two best options at wide receiver, with Adam Thielen most likely reverting to his number 3 option. Bryce Young has everything around him to succeed in Carolina this year. Now, I'm not going to make any more excuses for Bryce Young this year if he underwhelms again. When you get drafted number 1 overall, you already know you're going into a bad situation. But the reason for you getting drafted that high is because you're able to overcome dysfunction. When Joe Burrow got drafted to the Cincinnati Bengals, he didn't have an all-around great situation. He took them to the Super Bowl with a star-studded group of wide receivers, but one of the worst offensive lines in the Super Bowl era to ever make it to that game. When you get drafted high, you're not going to a great franchise or a great situation, so you have to be able to overcome limitations. Bryce Young, he has limitations himself that he has to overcome, and we don't know if he's going to be able to reach his full potential because of his limitations with his size. But one thing that I do see with Bryce Young is that I saw a guy who was tough as nails. I saw a guy who got hit hella times and got back up. Hell, he missed less games than Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud, guys who were giants compared to him. And many people had questions about Bryce Young's durability and how he was going to be able to hold up throughout the 17-game regular season. Well, he held up pretty fine considering how big of a disaster the Carolina Panthers were last year when it came to their offensive line, the wide receivers not being able to separate, the play calling being abysmal. I'm not saying that Bryce Young wasn't part of the problem, but I think that his rookie season and how underwhelming he looked was more due to the situation that he was in. Because I remember the Bryce Young that I saw out of Alabama, and the Bryce Young that I saw in Alabama looked nothing like the Bryce Young that I saw last year. As a matter of fact, he looked worse. And I understand that The NFL game is way different from the college game. You don't have to scream that at me. But Bryce Young carried Alabama on his back. And I get sick and tired of the casuals out there who just say, man, JT, he played for Bama. He played on a stacked team. No, if you go and you look at that roster and you do your homework, there's only 2 players on that Bama team that Bryce Young played with that were first rounders. That being Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams. You can't name another first round pick off those Alabama teams that Bryce Young played on the offense side of the football. When Bryce Young left for the NFL draft, Nick Saban cleared house with his whole entire coaching staff. You want to know why? His explanation was, we were too Bryce Young dependent. Bryce Young, I still believe, has all the talent in the world, despite his lack of size, to become one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Great anticipation, really accurate, has high football IQ. He just was in a compromising situation. And I think that a lot of people in the media and fans are really unfair with how they assess Bryce Young's first year because of how great C.J. Stroud was. C.J. Stroud went to the Houston Texans, who had DeMeco Ryans as their head coach. And although he's a defensive-minded coach, this dude is a stud head coach. Everybody knew once the Texans hired him, he was going to succeed. We just didn't know how long it was going to take. We just didn't expect the Texans to right out the gate win the AFC South. And C.J. Stroud's first season, C.J. Stroud had better receivers than what Bryce Young had. Yes, his offensive line wasn't good neither, and he didn't really have much of a run game, but his receivers, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, were miles better than anything that the Carolina Panthers gave Bryce Young to work with in 2023. And I'm going to remind you guys one last time, Bryce Young is 1-0 against C.J. Stroud. I love C.J. Stroud. He's one of my favorite players in the league, but he's 1-0 against the poster boy and the golden child, who many people criticize the Carolina Panthers for not drafting over Bryce Young. I'm just saying, I expect Bryce Young to shake back this year under Dave Canales. Don't be surprised if you see Bryce Young and the running to be a finalist for a comeback player of the year this year. I feel like too many people have counted this dude out way too quickly, and they've been unfair when it comes to assessing his situation. Yes, the quarterback position is the most important in the NFL because they have the greatest influence on the team, because they're the only player on offense or on the team in general who touches the ball every play. And the better the quarterback, the more they can do with less. But you just can't expect a guy like Bryce Young to go into as bad as the situation that he was in last year and just find a way to succeed, because it was damn near impossible. And this isn't the first time we've seen a young quarterback early into their career get compromised, being in a bad situation. Recently, Trevor Lawrence fell victim to the same thing, and we saw how good he looked the following year under Doug Peterson. So I'm not going to write off Bryce Young just yet. This is the year that I'm going to take to actually assess and define just how good Bryce Young is going to be in the NFL. I'm just going to act like his rookie season didn't happen, because he didn't have anything to work with. And if you actually are somebody who follows the game of football and you claim to know this game as well as what you claim to do in the comment section, then you should know that no matter how good of a quarterback you may be, you got to have some functioning parts around you to win. Yes, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl with some no names at receiver, but he still had Travis Kelce, he still had Rashee Rice, and he has Andy Reid, one of the greatest offensive minds, if not the greatest offensive mind that ever coached this game. Bryce Young has to overcome certain limitations, but he couldn't overcome a complete disaster, which was the Carolina Panthers last year.